Okay.
Yoji. Okay.
So
Uchiha.
there is a whole
Heard of him?
backstory. Yep. There's a whole backstory about this guy. Uh, so personally, I like Uchihas a lot. So this guy has something to do with the Uchihas. So that's why I like his story much. So we are in for a story, character analysis. So this guy was having a very abusive father in his childhood. Okay.
Okay.
So what happens is when he was, I believe, if I'm not wrong, 5 years old, he spills, juice on his father during some situation, and his father was so mad about it, he comes in and tries to almost slit the throat of his son.
Oh. Oh, damn.
Well, he survives, fortunately, but then he loses his vocal cord. He loses the ability to speak.
Oh, damn.
But then the kid was, was through so much of an abusive relationship, he got fed up of it and he retaliates and then he kills his father.
No.
Sheesh, man.
Yeah.
Sheesh.
But then Danzo being Danzo and him having the connection with the Aburames, he comes in and he takes Yoji under his wing.
Mm.
Oh.
Oh no.
Oh.
And now, since these Aburame people were associated with insects, Danzo provides him with some sort of insects which could sort of produce some sound apparently. So he tries to teach him how to control them so that he could make up for his lost vocal cord. So he used to try to cover these whatever patches that he had and try to produce sounds through these insects. But then, well, it is natural. It's not natural, right? It is not natural. So he felt a lot of strain when it comes to speaking or producing sound. So he preferred to remain silent, which is anyhow naturally how Aburame people are, introvert people. So this is how he didn't prefer to talk much. So then what happened is later, as we know, he was put under the Anbu route under Danzo. But then when it came down to the point of time of Itachi being in the academy, I believe he was 6 years old, if I'm not wrong. Danzo made sure or assigned a mission to Yoji to make sure he had an eye on Itachi Uchiha of Team 2 in the academy. Just think about the
Team
situation.
2.
Team 2. Itachi was from Team 2. Okay. Now the question is, this is a very interesting situation here, slightly deviating from the topic. The head of the village, one of the heads of the village, asks his root member to focus on a 6-year-old child. Back then, he had never exhibited anything technically. All maximum maybe shadow clone jutsu. That was, or some sort of a prodigious academical thing. But then, what might have been the reason? I believe the only reason was his father, the wicked Aifugaku. Just because he was the son of wicked Aifugaku. I believe Danzo, because there was a coup situation, he didn't like the Uchihas. So I believe the gravity of the situation or gravity of how powerful Fugaku was so much that he had to spy on his son just because he was son of Fugaku. That states how extraordinary Fugaku was. Just another testament to this is Hiruzen, or I believe, I'm not sure, I think Danzo himself tells that he's one in a generation, Fugaku Uchiha. Then since he was an Uchiha, I believe he didn't want him as the Hokage during Minato's selection. So that is another topic. We can keep it for another video. So, yep.
But then, if Fugaku's son had to be spied, and the intention was to spy on Fugaku in actuality, why not spy on Fugaku directly?
No. It was technically not to spy on. Fugaku was someone who was the political head of their clan. One thing. Second thing, he was the head of the police force. So it is not so simple to spy on him.
Right.
But then, if you pluck off a fresh bud which is growing, which is Itachi, or try to make sure or read everything about him and be ready for him, you can be prepared for the new threat that is upcoming, right? That is how Danzo thinks always. He always thinks about the repercussions, like heartlessly. Kill everybody because they might be a threat in the future. That's how he thinks. So that might have been a possible situation there. So yeah, coming back. So Yoji was asked to keep an eye on Itachi Uchiha. Okay. Now what happens is once we know that Itachi was not in the academy for too long because of his prodigious behavior.
Correct.
Well, we see how he trains with Shisui eventually, which is I love that equation by the way, brotherly bonds between the two prodigies.
Brothers.
But then at this point of time, Yoji did not have the mission because he could not keep an eye on him. But eventually, Itachi and Shisui come back to the Anbu when I believe he was 10 years old. I think Itachi comes to Anbu when he was 10, if I'm not wrong. So at this point of time, Danzo again assigns this mission to Yoji, so to make sure that he keeps an eye on Itachi. But now the thing is, Yoji is in root, Itachi is in row. What is row is, if you remember, there was a part of Anbu under Hiruzen Sarutobi.
Yeah.
Kakashi, Shisui, Itachi. It was called Team Row, okay? It was called Team Row.
Also, Itachi joins Anbu at age 11. He becomes a
11?
Chunin at 10.
Okay. Thank you. That's a small misconception.
Genin at 8.
Okay, Genin at 8. So 10, okay, fair enough. So what happens is he is again assigned a mission to keep an eye on Itachi, but then he's en route and Itachi is in Team Ro. So Danzo puts him to the Team Ro in the name or code name of Suguru.
Oh.
He was never called Yoji after that. His name is Suguru. Okay. So.
Oh, that's why when you search up his name, it comes as both the names.
Exactly. His name is Suguru now. Okay.
Okay.
So, what happens is later. This is the reason why Danzo already knew what exactly Shisui was trying to do. Because he was in Team Ro. He had a spy. He was hiding inside the team. Well, yes, it was also because Hiruzen was, not that secretive compared to.
Very
so, well, that is also true. But then, even before that, if there was a discussion between Itachi and Shisui, there is a possibility that Yoji might have known. But knowing those two were so brilliant, there is both possibilities. But yes, Yoji was one of the reasons why Danzo was sort of ready for things. But this is where things get interesting. Now, Shisui had such a perfect plan. What he wanted to do, he was ready to cast Koto Amatsukami on the entire Uchiha clan, including Fugaku Uchiha, and basically change their reality in their mind itself and make them love the village or like the village and even remove all the kudeta plans in their head. That was going to be a sure shot success. But then Danzo didn't believe in the Uchihas whatsoever. Well, here is where I have another question in my mind about Danzo. Danzo's motive, although it always looks like as if he looks, or thinks about the welfare of Konoha, when it comes to Uchihas especially, his moves were never really that clear. It always felt he had a predestined or prejudiced mindset when it comes to Uchihas, as if he has some sort of a grudge on them, some sort of a personal, vengeance on them, or personal motive behind Uchiha family. And Danzo might have had some sort of a past between them. That's what I always feel. Because look at the Uchiha Shizui's point of view. He's openly saying, I'm going against my clan. I am ready to do this thing. But then he says, I don't believe you. It doesn't literally fit in. Because he was not even going to do something the other way around. Because we know how Shisui was. We know his track record. He has been assigned missions by Danzo himself, which he has succeeded. Well, this is something which I always think about. We can talk about this in another video. Okay. So, coming back. So, Danzo already was ready for Shisui. What happened is, if we see, when Shisui put Danzo under a genjutsu, he does fall under the genjutsu, but then eventually he recovers very fast. This is again another topic which I always think about. he already had a Sharingan in his eye before he plugged Shisui's eye and put in there.
Oh,
Correct me if I'm wrong. Right, he already had covered his eye right before that.
Yeah.
So, I always believe that this, Danzo already had an eye which is very powerful or of the caliber of Shisui, because he could count, even though if it was a basic genjutsu, he could still counter Shizui's genjutsu, because we've seen Itachi's basic genjutsu is traumatic. Whose eye was that? Was it of Kagami Uchiha, who is the ancestor of Shisui,
oh god.
who is known to be the teammate of Danzo and Hiruzen? We don't know how he died. We just know he died.
Oh no.
Possible, knowing Danzo, he doesn't hesitate. So things, there seems it seems to have some sort of a connection here. That's what I feel always. So now, although he recovered from the genjutsu, right after that we see him putting his hand to the eye socket of Shisui and plucking out the eyeball. Why did Shisui not have any sort of a reflex reaction to that? He's a ninja, man who's always on the feet. He's called the Shisui the teleporter, one of the fastest ninjas to ever exist in Konoha. It is because Yoji Aburame, during the conversation of Danzo and Shisui, he's like, I am, there was a conversation, right? You have an eye which is, you don't know how to use this prodigy Shisui, etc., blah, blah, blah. During this conversation, Yoji had already set a trap. He had insects which could inject some sort of a paralysis, which would inject poison into the body of Shisui, which would paralyze him.
Whoa.
That is the reason why he could not even move during that scene. It was not it is not about strength, bro. You may be so strong. I inject poison into your body and paralyze you. What can you do?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
It's not a straight fight, right?
Yeah, true.
Despite of that, he still used Susanoo, escaped from the scene. It was not Susanoo. He put a smoke bomb, escaped from the scene, and then he was attacked by the Anbu root members. He escaped from there using Susanoo in such a bad state. That is only possible because he was Shisui Uchiha. This was the reason why Yoji was very important in this plan, because he was the one behind causing paralysis for Shisui, so that he was trapped under Danzo and he could get his eyes. But now, you might think, Danzo doing all these things, don't you think if people found a dead body, especially Hiruzen, who was so close to Shisui, if we found a dead body of him, don't you think in the autopsy people will get to know?
Yeah.
But his, parasites, or the poison from his parasite was in such a way that the poison would break down before the body went to autopsy. That is how he built it. It was a sure shot plan where Danzo was not going to be suspected at all.
Damn.
But then we know he didn't fall into the trap. Itachi comes to the rescue, and unfortunately we see how the torture Itachi feels after that, the hatred, the sadness. Oh my god, that's a beautiful writing there.
Yeah.
So that is why Yoji Aburame is important. But the story doesn't end here.